Many people today have a clear picture of hell. They imagine a place of endless fire and terrible suffering for those who sin. This idea is very common in our culture. Many assume this view of hell comes directly from the earliest parts of the Bible. However, this popular image of fiery eternal torment is not actually what the original authors wrote about. Their understanding of the afterlife was quite different. To understand what the Bible truly says, we must look at its original languages. These are primarily Hebrew for the Old Testament and Greek for the New Testament. The words that later got translated as hell carried different meanings for ancient writers. Understanding these original meanings is very important. It helps us avoid imposing our modern ideas onto these ancient and sacred texts. The problem partly began with translation. Several distinct Hebrew and Greek words which describe different concepts of the afterlife were often translated into English using a single word, hell. This simplification has caused a great deal of confusion. It has hidden the variety of beliefs that existed among early biblical writers. Instead of one consistent idea of hell, we find a range of views on life after death. In this video, we will explore these original terms. We will look at Sheol from the Hebrew Bible. We will examine Hades, Gehenna, and Tartarus. These terms appear in the Greek New Testament. What did these words mean to the first people who heard them and used them in their writings? By understanding their original contexts, we can see how the modern concept of hell developed over many centuries of thought. The main term for the afterlife in the Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament, is the word Sheol. Sheol was not imagined as a place of fiery torment or a place where God punished sinners eternally. Instead, it was seen as a realm of darkness, a place of profound silence and inactivity. All people, whether they were good or bad, were thought to go to Sheol when they died. It was the common destiny for all humanity. Sheol was essentially the grave, a vast underworld. It was a neutral place, not one of judgment. Life, as it was known on earth, simply ceased there. The dead in Sheol were often described as shades, feeble, weak, and without real consciousness. They did not praise God or engage in any activity. The primary characteristic of Sheol was separation from the living and from God. It was a somber and unavoidable end. When we turn to the New Testament, which was written in Greek, we find the word Hades used to describe the afterlife. Hades is largely the Greek equivalent of Sheol. In the Septuagint, the Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible, Sheol was almost always translated as Hades. So, for many early Greek-speaking Jews and Christians, Hades meant much the same as Sheol, a general place for all the departed dead. Like Sheol, Hades was generally understood as a temporary holding place for departed spirits. It was not typically seen as the final destination of eternal punishment involving fire and brimstone. While some New Testament passages, like Luke's parable, the story of the rich man and Lazarus, show Hades with separate areas for the righteous and wicked, it still primarily functions as an intermediate state before a future resurrection and final judgment. Another important term often translated as hell is the Greek word Gehenna, found in the New Testament. Gehenna has a very specific background. It refers to the Valley of Hinnom, a real place. This valley was located just south of Jerusalem. It had a dark and notorious history. In Old Testament times, some Israelites had tragically sacrificed their children there to pagan gods. This made it a place of defilement. Later, the Valley of Hinnom became essentially the city dump for Jerusalem. Refuse, garbage, and even animal carcasses were thrown there to be consumed by fire. Fires smoldered there almost constantly. So, when Yeshua spoke of Gehenna, his audience knew exactly what he meant. He used this vivid, repulsive imagery as a powerful symbol for divine judgment and the utter destruction of the wicked. A much rarer term is Tartarus. This word appears only one single time in the entire New Testament, in 2 Peter 2:4. Tartarus was a concept borrowed from Greek mythology. In those ancient myths, Tartarus was a deep abyss, a dark pit located even lower than Hades. It was known as a place of punishment specifically for rebellious gods, like the Titans, and for the most wicked of human beings. In its single biblical usage, however, Tartarus is not described as a place for humans. Instead, the author of 2 Peter uses it to describe the confinement of certain rebellious angels. These angels sinned against God and are said to be held in chains of deepest darkness in Tartarus, awaiting their final judgment. So it's a specific holding place for these spiritual beings, not the general hell for unsaved people. So how did these distinct concepts, Sheol, Hades, Gehenna, and Tartarus, all become blended into the single idea of hell? A large part of this happened through translation. When the Bible was translated into English, starting with early versions and leading to the King James Version, translators often chose the Old English word hell to render all these different Greek and Hebrew terms. This single word began to obscure the nuances. The Old English word hell originally meant something like a hidden or covered place, which is actually quite similar to the idea of Sheol. However, over time, and especially by the medieval period, the meaning of hell or hell in English had already started to shift significantly. It increasingly became associated with a place of terrible punishment and torment for sinners. This pre-existing understanding influenced translation choices. This decision to use one English word for several different original terms had profound and lasting consequences. It flattened the diverse biblical portrayals of the afterlife. It created the impression that the Bible presents a single, consistent doctrine of hell as a place of eternal fiery torment for the wicked. This simplified view has dominated popular Christian understanding for many hundreds of years now. Finally, the modern image of hell was not shaped by the Bible alone. It continued to evolve long after the biblical period. Christian theologians and thinkers over the centuries developed more elaborate and systematic doctrines of hell. They often incorporated ideas from Greek philosophy and other cultural and religious sources. Literary works also played a massive role. Most famously, Dante Alighieri's Inferno, part of the Divine Comedy, provided vivid, lasting images of a structured hell with detailed punishments for every sin. This artistic vision, more than specific biblical texts, has profoundly shaped how many people imagine hell today. Thus, our modern concept is a complex tapestry, woven from ancient words, translation choices, theology, and art. So, in simple terms, was hell in the original Bible? No, it wasn't. Hell, as we know of it today, is not mentioned in the original scriptures, I repeat. The concept of hell as understood in the Bible is not present in the original texts. The idea of hell as a place of eternal punishment for the wicked was developed later by Christian theologians.